The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen. The dates in the parentheses are the year of his birth and the year of his death. He is a very, very, very famous author of a lot of fairy tales, some of which you may have already read. The vocabulary words that go with The Emperor's New Clothes include a rascal, which is a person who is mischievous or dishonest, a chamber, which is a large room, weave or wove is to make cloth from threads, peculiar, strange or unusual, distinguish, recognize or tell the difference, and loom is a machine for weaving cloth. Stories have main or central ideas. That the central or main idea is the most important idea of the story. In fairy tales, the central or main idea is called the moral of the story because the story teaches a lesson about life. As we read this story, think about what the central or main idea might be, and we'll talk about it at the end. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so fond of new clothes that he spent all of his money on them. He was not concerned about his army. He cared nothing about the theater or for riding around town, except to show off his new clothes. He had a costume for every hour in the day, and just as they say of most kings or emperors, he is in his throne chamber, they said of him. The emperor is in his dressing room. People were happy in the town where the emperor lived, and many strangers came to it every day. One day, two rascals, remember that's a dishonest person, one day two rascals arrived. They said they were weavers and that they knew how to weave the most beautiful cloth imaginable. Not only were the colors and patterns very beautiful, but the clothes that were made of the cloth had the peculiar property of being invisible to every person who was unfit for the office they held or who was very stupid. Those would be valuable clothes, thought the emperor. By wearing them, I could discover which of the people in my empire are not fit for their offices, and I would be able to distinguish wise people from fools. Yes, I must order some of the cloth to be woven for me. And he paid the rascals a large amount of money in advance, as they asked. They put up two looms and pretended to be weaving, though there was nothing on their looms. They called for the finest silks and the purest gold thread, all of which went into their bags, and they pretended to work at their empty looms till late every night. I would like to know how those weavers are getting on with the cloth, thought the emperor. But he felt a little uneasy when he remembered that those who were stupid or unfit for their office would not be able to see the material. He believed that he had nothing to fear for himself, but still he thought it better to send someone else first. I will send my prime minister to the weavers, thought the emperor. He will be the best one to judge this cloth, for he is a man of sense, and nobody is more fit for his office than him. So the prime minister went to the room where the two rascals sat working the empty looms. Oh my goodness, he thought, opening his eyes wide. I can't see anything at all. But he didn't say so aloud. Both the rascals begged him to step a little nearer and asked him if he did not think the patterns very pretty and the coloring fine. They pointed to the empty loom as they did so, and the poor prime minister kept staring as hard as he could, but without being able to see anything on it, for of course there was nothing to see. Is it possible that I am stupid? Thought the prime minister. I have never thought so, and nobody must know it. Or is it true that I am not fit for my office? I can't say that I cannot see the stuff. Well, what do you think of the cloth? Asked the rascal who was pretending to go on with his work. It is most elegant, most beautiful, said the prime minister as he peered through his glasses. What a fine pattern and what bright colors. I will certainly tell the emperor how pleased I am with the cloth. We are glad of that, said both the weavers, and then they named the colors and pointed out the special features of the pattern. The prime minister paid close attention so that he could repeat it to the emperor. And then the rascals asked for more money, more silk, and more gold thread to be able to proceed with the weaving, but they put it all into their own pockets, though they went on as before, pretending to weave at the empty looms. After a little time, the emperor sent another trusted man to see how the weaving was coming on, and if the cloth would soon be ready. The same thing happened with him as with the prime minister. He looked and looked, but since there were only empty looms to see, he could see nothing. "Is this not the most beautiful cloth?" asked the weavers, pointing to one of the looms and explaining the beautiful pattern and the colors which were not there to be seen. "I am not stupid. I know I'm not," thought the man, "so it must be that I am not fit for my good office. It is very strange, but I must not let anyone notice." So he praised the cloth he did not see and assured the weavers of his delight in the lovely colors and the beautiful pattern. "It is perfectly charming," he reported to the emperor. The emperor thought that he should like to see it himself while it was still on the loom. With a group of carefully selected people, among whom were the two worthy men who had been there before, he went to visit the rascals, who were pretending to work as hard as ever at the empty looms. "Is it not beautiful?" said both men who had already visited the room. "See, your majesty, what bright colors and what a pretty pattern." And they pointed toward the looms because they believed that others could see what they did not. "What?" thought the emperor. "I see nothing at all. This is terrible. Am I a fool? Am I not fit to be emperor? This is a dreadful thing to have happened to me." "Oh, it is very pretty. It has my highest approval," the emperor said aloud. He nodded with satisfaction as he gazed at the empty looms, for he would not admit that he could see nothing. The whole group looked and looked, each seeing no more than the others, but like the emperor, they all exclaimed, "Oh, it is beautiful!" They even suggested to the emperor that he wear the splendid new clothes for the first time in a great parade which was to take place soon. "Splendid, gorgeous, magnificent," they said to each other. All of them were equally delighted with the weaver's work. The emperor gave each of the rascals an order of knighthood to be worn on their chests, and the title Gentleman Weaver of the Emperor's Chamber. Before the day on which the parade was to take place, the weavers stayed up the whole night so that people would see how hard they worked to get the emperor's new clothes ready. They pretended to take the stuff from the loom, they cut it out in the air with huge scissors, and they stitched away with needles which had no thread. At last they said, "Now the clothes are finished." The emperor came to them, and each of the rogues lifted his arm as if he held something, saying, "See, here are the trousers, here is the coat, here is the cloak," and so on. It is as light as a spider's web. One would almost feel as if one had nothing on, but that is the wonder of it. "Yes," said all the others, but they saw nothing, for there was nothing to see. "Will your majesty please take off your clothes so that you can put on the new clothes here before the great mirror?" The emperor undressed, and the rascals pretended to put on first one garment and then another of the new clothes they had pretended to make. They pretended to fasten something round his waist and to tie on something across his shoulders. This, they said, was the train. Then the emperor turned around and around before the mirror. "How splendid the emperor looks in his new clothes! How becoming they are!" cried everybody in turn. "That is a great costume." "The canopy that is to be carried over your majesty in the parade is waiting outside," said the person in charge of the parade. Quietly, the weavers left town. I wonder why the weavers left town before the parade started. "Well, I am ready," said the emperor. "Don't the clothes look wonderful?" The attendants who were to carry the long train stooped and put their hands near the floor as if they were lifting it. Then they pretended to be holding something up in the air. They would not let it be noticed that they could see and feel nothing. So the emperor went along in the parade under the splendid canopy, and everyone in the street said, "How beautiful are the emperor's new clothes! What a splendid train, and how well they fit him!" Nobody wanted to let it appear that they could see nothing, for that would prove that he was stupid. None of the emperor's clothes had been so great a success before. "But he has nothing on," said a little child. "Listen to the child," said his father, and people whispered to one another what the child had said. "He has nothing on. A child said, he has nothing on." "He has nothing on," cried all the people. The emperor was startled by this, but he had a suspicion that they were right. But he thought, "I must act like I'm wearing clothes and go on with the parade." So he held himself more stiffly than ever, and the attendants held up the train that was not there. The end. Remember, while we were reading this book, you were supposed to be thinking about what you thought the main or central idea might be. Here are 4 choices. Should it be, clothes don't make you better than others? Spend less money on clothing and shoes? Don't get a swelled head or be too proud? Some people will try to cheat you. Now, I don't know what you think, but I think that it should be, don't get a swelled head or be too proud. The adults in our story really, 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 really should have told the emperor that there was no clothing, that there was no cloth. But they all were too proud to admit that they could see nothing because they were afraid other people would think that they were stupid, which in an actuality they would have been very smart to say, there's nothing there. So the main idea, don't get a swelled head or be too proud.